Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the DJP. I just wanted to take a quick minute to tell you that, first of all, I love you. And second, you're doing okay. No matter where you're at in life, no matter what's going on, no matter how good or bad things seem, you're doing just fine, and I care about you. Anyway, on this episode, my guest is Dr. Jeremy Sherman. And Dr. Jeremy has written a book about assholes. A book called What's Up with Assholes, in which he teaches us how to deal with those kinds of people. And he is for sure an expert on that. He lived in the farm in Lewis County, Tennessee, which is at one point was the largest hippie commune in the world. And he currently lives in Berkeley. And we all know that there's plenty of assholes out there, right? I'm just kidding. I mean, probably not. There probably is. I think we probably talk about that. I'm still working on some pretty cool guests for the show. Hopefully things pan out. If you do like this episode or you enjoy other episodes, please remember to go rate, review, and subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, preferably, or wherever you get your podcast from. Without further ado, Dr. Jeremy Sherman.
You might catch yourself sliding in and out of a hallucinatory state. Just relax and enjoy it. Just relax and enjoy it.
This is an experiment in mind formation. Information. Forming, controlling, operating your mind and your brain. We're using digital techniques to overload, scramble, confuse, unfocus your mind. The natural state of the brain is chaos. Chaos is beautiful.
You again.
Me again. Hey, what's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm good. How about yourself?
Very good. Just fine.
Do?
What's that?
How's the mouth?
The mouth is better. They told me it wasn't a root canal sort of thing.
That's good.
Receding gums.
That happens.
That does. All sorts of things recede.
Yeah.
Hair, gums.
Life.
Yeah. Oh, what a bummer.
Yeah. I do I help facilitate a Buddhist recovery program here in town.
Yeah.
And everybody else, all the other facilitators are all happy and chipper, and I'm the one guy that comes in and does meditations on death.
That's good. Right on.
I come in and just bum everybody out. I feel they need that. I feel like they need that. I mean, it can't be flowers and sunshine all the time, right?
No. And that's a great theme for our conversation, actually. I mean, it relates. Remember, one of the things we talked about was that, from my perspective, irony is the right response to life. It's dire and slapstick at the same time.
Right.
Yes, can't be all light. The light stuff was exactly what I meant by smarma. It's the smarmy dharma.
Yeah, I'm one of those grim pasana people.
Good.
That doom vipassana.
Right, that's right. And You're not alone in that. I mean, the Tibetan Buddhists, they drank out of skulls, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That's what they say.
So they say. That's right.
Right.
They could have been fake Halloween ones bought at the spirit store that shows up in town one day.
That's funny you mentioned that. I think my girlfriend and I and her kids are going there to the spirit store here in a little bit, actually.
Perfect. No, I agree.
Yeah.
And since I saw you last, I've been rethinking my idea that we ought to have a Halloween called Judgment Day, where people go around ironically giving judgments and making opinions all day long, just to vent it. You know, there's a part of us that wants to play the authority and decide what's good and what's bad, and we ought to have a day in which everybody's allowed to do that. Judgment Day.
That reminds me of on, you remember on Seinfeld, Festivus with the,
yes.
airing of grievances?
Exactly. It's very much Festivus, right?
Right. It begins with the airing of grievances.
Exactly.
I think all holidays should begin with that.
Right. Get them out of the way.
They certainly all end that way.
Ouch.
At least if you're spending them with family, right?
Right on. Yes. So, take us where you want to go.
I don't know, man. Let's just go wherever. I wanted to talk about cults.
Good.
That seemed like a good place for us to go.
Excellent. Yes.
So first of all, like, you are like the Dharma junkie leading authority on assholes so far. So, and I think we established last time we talked, which for everybody listening, we had a really good conversation just a few days ago, and Zoom for some reason saw fit to screw up the recording somehow. So we're doing it again. Well, we're having obviously another conversation. We're not doing the same one because that's fucking impossible.
No, unless we cultivate sufficient amnesia, but I don't think we can pull that off. I remember you too well.
Right. And I remember myself too well. So that, how could we have the same conversation if we lack the same identity? Exactly. So, and you might remember that. Well, first of all, I am what they call a nominalist. That is, I'm happy to work with any definition we use, that we propose. My goal is to be consistent in it. That is, I want to avoid equivocation where 1 minute I define something one way and the next minute I talking out the other side of my mouth, I define it a different way. Right.
For me, for the sake of argument, I would define a cult as plural of asshole. That is, just as you get gaggles of geese, you'd have cults of assholes. And but I have a very specific definition of asshole, which is different from how other people use the term. And I also describe that not only do I speak at Institute for Cultic Studies international conferences, I know what it's like to be cultish because I lived on something that I don't think would be defined as an official cult, but I was definitely cultish about it. I have the direct experience of the relief from the burdens of doubt and self-doubt through a claim that I have embraced some lofty ideal against its opposite, against its opposing belief. I know what it's like to feel like I mastered it. I solved the crossword puzzle of life. I have found the Dharma, you could say. It was a Buddhist-leaning community, and it was a fabulous experiment. Right now on Facebook, some of us old members are basically responding to a question I posed last night, which is, what practical benefits did you gain from it? What habits did you learn there that you've ended up keeping going straight through? So I'm really grateful for my experience there, but also for my experience of cultishness. I know what it's like to feel like a know-it-all. I know what it's like to get high on the alleviation of all doubt, the sense that I could do no wrong because I had joined the right movement, the right ideology, and therefore was on the path.
Well, what benefits did you gain?
Oh, well, I was a kind of a wimpy, pampered child. I'd grown up in affluence, and I had become affluence that also promoted intellectualism. So I was basically a college student when I joined. Right. I joined because I didn't feel like I knew the world well enough, and the commune was going to be a kind of boot camp for that. And sure enough, it was. We worked our asses off. We built 175 buildings from scratch on 1,700 acres. We took care of 700 kids. We had an open door policy where anybody could stay with us. We had 20,000 visitors a year. We grew our own food. Everybody worked really hard. We were young, and it was great. The rule there was, if someone asked you to do something, the answer was yes. And also the peer pressure was intense there. That is, nobody would ask you to do anything weird. because if they did, what goes around comes around. If you behave well, everybody knows. If you don't behave well in a community as small as ours was, 1,400 people, everybody knows. I mean, I remember one day I was sick with a mild cold and therefore home from the construction crew. We would send 150, we called ourselves monkeys, out to do construction work. And one day I was home. I went to the next door neighbor's house to flirt with a woman there. I hadn't had sex in two years. I was 20 years old. The rule there was you don't have sex unless you're engaged to be married. I hadn't been married, and therefore I wasn't having sex. I went over and simply had a conversation with her. By that evening, everyone in the entire commune knew about me doing that. And I heard from my straw boss, the guy who was in charge of the construction crew, who was older than me by about 10, 15 years. He said, you can't do that. So yeah, the peer pressure was intense. And the price I paid for the kinds of sacrifices I made, I mean, the benefit I gained for the sacrifices I made was this smugness, this sense that I was living the Dharma. So it was in a way it was a sobriety thing for me, and I can appreciate it for what it does. I don't end up subscribing to the beliefs that we held back then. I don't think life is as simple as we thought it was back then. I no longer believe that love is the answer, which was one of these things that we hippies believed back then. I believe it's a question. I'm trying to figure out what to love, not I don't believe that love is the answer. But so in that sense, its answers were the springboard to my questions. Yeah, go ahead.
Wouldn't the definition of love be really dependent? Like, wouldn't that be super important to figuring out
and
if
unlike
love is the answer? Like, wouldn't how you define love be
totally? Yeah, and once again, I am one of the few people who can give you an operational definition of love. Operational means that I'm not saying it's accurate, but I am saying it. When I call something operational definition, I mean I could hire someone to employ my definition, and they would be able to sort out people who fit the category I'm describing as love. And it's based on my origins of life research. That is, I have a sense of how what we think of socially or psychologically as connection begins. And it's very practical. It's doing dedicated work to maintain something that you are dependent upon. In fact, my definition of love is exactly the same as my definition of addiction, with one exception. That is, it's a subjective guess about how it will turn out. If I think someone is doing dedicated work to maintain something they depend upon, and I think that it's going to work out good for them, then I'll call it love. I'll say, you and your partner are clearly in love. If I think that someone is partnered with someone to whom they're doing dedicated work to maintain the other person, and the other person's bad for them, or it's not going to turn out well for them one way or another, I'll call it addicted. I'll say, dude, you're addicted to her. And that would apply across the board. I'm addicted to all sorts of things that I happen to think are great addictions. That's why I would call them love. I love my research. I love playing music. Right. What am I talking about? I actually love grocery stores. It's milder than that, but here's what I mean. I do dedicated work to maintain access to them. And you can tell I'm doing dedicated work because of all the things I could be doing. I'm doing these particular things to maintain a car, to maintain an income, et cetera, so I can use them. And what do I mean by dependent upon them? Well, you can tell what happens if I lost access to grocery stores. I wouldn't be half the man I am. I would become hampered. I would become less well. And this is founded on the biological research that we do. I mean, I'm also addicted to vitamin C from external sources. And you'll notice that dogs and cats are not. Right. They generate their own vitamin C. So I can tell you the story of how I ended up becoming addicted to external sources. It's just like morphine. It's the same story, playing out at the genetic level. 35 million years ago, we end up in trees where we have access to fruit, which is another source of vitamin C. So we used to produce our own vitamin C just like cats and dogs do. Once we have another source, an external source of vitamin C, We no longer have to produce it ourselves. We lose
Right.
the capacity to produce it ourselves, and suddenly we are dependent on this external source. And that's even the argument among scientists about how we got color vision. It was to distinguish between ripe and unripe fruit. That's what biologists will say about the human capacity or primate capacity for color vision. So I'm now addicted to it. I'm now connected to it. So coming back to the question whether love is the answer by that definition, no, I don't want to be addicted to everything. I don't want to be doing dedicated work to maintain access to everything. That wouldn't work. It takes real effort to show love. I mean, I can have a kind of a lofty sensation and intellectual commitment in principle to loving everything, but love takes effort. Ask your girlfriend. She'll tell you, right? Okay, so I can't possibly love everything. And not only that, on top of that, love is a preference, which means if I love one thing more, I'm going to love it more than something else. So if I love justice or if I love kindness, I'm going to hate unkindness and injustice. And I don't want to mince words about it. So that's what I mean. By my definition, no, I don't think love is I got to figure out what to love. I don't, I don't love Nazis, for an example, because I love justice too much to love Nazis, and I don't want to mince words about it. I don't want to say, well, I love them, but I still want to put them all in prison. I don't want to mince words.
Would you say you have compassion for Nazis?
Yes, in fact, I've had to come up with this important distinction for me. I want to be able to empathize and have compassion for anyone and everyone. Right. But I have to be very clear, once again, operational definitions. So for me, my definition of empathy is being able to put myself in their shoes. And my definition of compassion is remembering when I was in their shoes.
Ooh.
No, I know. I say things that are so heavy they just they blow the equipment right out. That was deep. No, so to some degree or another, I have compassion for Stalin. Right. By which I mean I can imagine being in his shoes, but I can also remember when I was basically in his shoes. I have a particular instance I keep in mind. I had a 100-student class in psychology, and there was one student who was constantly provoking me, and I wanted to shut him down. And I thought, oh, damn, that's what's going on with Stalin. He's way out on a limb. He can't afford to have anybody giving him a hard time. So no, I was never as extreme as Stalin. I think I would stop short of that, but still, I know what it's like. Still, for me to have empathy and compassion, right, I need a clutch pedal between them and sympathy and charity. Sympathy is actually being motivated to accommodate them, and charity is accommodating them. Right. So for me, the ideal is that I would be able to sit down with Stalin, let's say, and make his case for him so well that he says, damn, you sure do understand my case. You made a better case for me than I did. And then slit his throat. That is, I can't, if sympathy and charity automatically follow from empathy and compassion, I won't be able to feel an empathy and compassion. So I need a clutch pedal in there. Right.
Yeah. That's one thing I struggle with is that, because I want to have empathy and compassion for everyone, and I think I do. But yeah, I would agree that if it necessitates some sort of charity on my end. I don't know if I can.
It's going to limit your capacity to have empathy and compassion. So
right.
Because if it's automatic,
there's labor involved.
That's the point. That's right. That's what I'm talking about. We have finite labor. We can't allocate it to everyone all the time. No one can. Right. We end up creating what I think of as pharospheres. That is a sphere of people with whom we try to maintain fairness. The universe itself is fundamentally unfair. There are all these imbalances.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So to be generating fairness takes an enormous amount of effort, and we have to allocate it. And so that's why I think it's kind of cultish. I just wrote an article this morning about this topic. You take a lofty sounding term like empathy or love or compassion, or it could be anything. It could be patriotism, it could be Christianity. It doesn't matter. It could be communism if you lived in the Soviet Union. Right. And you claim it as your white cape. So you wear that against its opposite. So unloving, whatever. So you're now the white caped hero against the black caped villain, and
Spy versus spy.
What's that?
Like spy versus spy.
Yeah, no, that's right. It's got that quality to it. But the difference here is that spy versus spy was always an ironic situation. That is, someone was on the verge of succeeding with something and they fail. And it was also nicely balanced between the two, which is like the Tao gives rise to both good and evil.
Right.
But the point is that once I have claimed that I am, it's basically, what I'm talking about is like this. You go see a superhero movie and you really love the superhero and you think of him as your ally against the villain. And so if anybody ever challenges you on anything, they must be the villain against the superhero. Right. So you imagine how this plays out in Christianity. I'm aligned with Christ. And if you say anything that challenges me, you're actually attacking Christ.
Yeah.
Yeah, and no, you're off to the races. That's actually a recipe for assholery.
I don't think that's just with Christianity. I think that can be.
No, that was my point.
Look at politics. Just look
no, that's right. You can do
vaccine debates these days. It's like if you're not aligned with one side or the other, then you can't even be in the middle anymore. You have to pick a side.
Right. And so this is the power of the holy war thing, which is that that if I attack you, that is, if I go to war against you, I will feel holy. Right. As if I accuse you of something, the last thing I'm going to do is remember when I did the same thing. That wouldn't be useful for me.
No,
so it'll emit vaporally. So I will feel holy, and the more I feel holy, the more it's my duty to attack you. And yeah, that's a drug. That's a drug that I think a lot of people are high on these days. And to your point, it's got nothing to do with Christianity. It's got nothing to do with any of these things. The high, you can get it no matter what your lofty word is. I mean, I've retired from dating about 6 years ago, but before that, there was a period. Thank you. Before that, I was I quit for a while because everybody I dated used the term mindful this way. Right. They were mindful, and if they didn't like something I said, I was unmindful. And I just thought, I mean, this was Berkeley, and this is Berkeley back in the Eat, Pray, Love days, and Eckhart Tolle was a big deal back then, and no, so I just simply said, no, I fold. I'm not doing this anymore. Right. So it's not Christianity. It can be any word, whatever buzzword gives you the buzz of being on the side of right against wrong.
I agree. Yeah, I love the way, I think we talked about this the last time we talked, the way mindfulness has just been repackaged into this neat little new agey term. It's like, oh man, I think that's been around for a while.
It's been around for a while. And we also talked in that conversation about how, well, first of all, I would say in general, any idea will tend to get bent into self-flattering use eventually. Right. As you give any idea enough time, it'll turn into some way by which you can play alignment with the heroes. Yeah. They're like Rorschach blots, but they're, any big word. Take for example the stuff I study, evolutionary theory. When Darwin comes up with natural selection, immediately the communists jump on it and say, yeah, the workers are the fittest, and the capitalists said, no, the capitalists are the fittest, and the Germans said, no, the Germans are the fittest. Everybody jumps on it and decides it proves that they're the heroes.
Right. Yeah, I think Hitler kind of took that to the extreme, at least with the master race kind of thing.
No, and he built that off of Darwin, and Darwin wouldn't have any of it. There's a copy of Das Kapital that shows up in Darwin's library. This is communism now. And Marx has sent it to Darwin because he's saying, I think this is aligned with your theory. The pages back then on books were not cut. When you bought a book, the pages, you had to cut them themselves. Darwin didn't cut the pages. He didn't read that book, maybe because he didn't get around to it, but chances are good. If you know him, he would have said, no, that's not my point. Another version of that I have to deal with a lot is that a lot of people these days say that Darwin explained life. And Darwin would say, no, I didn't explain life. I assumed life. Right. I only try to explain how speciation happens. No, I deal with that a lot because I work on explaining life. That is explaining trying, selves and trying. Yeah.
Right. We've gotten a little off course. Let's go back to cults.
Okay.
They're like, well, first of all, okay, so how did you get involved with we're not going to say it's a cult because it never really got super, super culty. You may have treated it culty, but the way you're describing it, it was not necessarily like you could leave if you wanted. Like
totally, you could leave.
You weren't bound to it.
There was some peer pressure. If you left, you were considered to have maybe lost the way. So there were definitely cultish elements to it, but it didn't actually lock down all the way. Right. One of the ways to talk about that is that it was plenty ironic. We teased about ourselves. Most cults are kind of humorless about themselves.
Right.
Yeah, there was no irony, but with us there was some irony. We teased about what we were doing. But you were asking, how did I join it?
Right. Yeah. How did you end up getting involved?
Oh, no, it's a perfect example of how one can join a cult. So I was halfway through my junior year in college. I was feeling kind of grubby from being kind of lazy. I was kind of slouchy. I was getting good grades. It was easy to get grades at university back then. There were a bunch of Mickey Mouse courses. This was Santa Cruz, UC Santa Cruz, back in the 70s. Good Lord, it was easy. You could get 5 units of university credit for keeping a freaking dream journal. And I didn't take courses that Mickey Mouse, but I got close. And I simply gave myself a month and said, you've got to find something that will whip your ass a bit more than this. You need some kind of boot camp. I didn't find anything that whole month. And then on the last day of that month, my mother's friend called. He was heading off to this commune. And I went and visited a local chapter of it. We had a chapter not too far from my home. Fell in love with it immediately, decided within a week to join it, which also meant, in this case, signing a vow of poverty. That is, you could not enter the place with your own personal wealth. We were a commune. That didn't mean I had to give the money to them, but I did have to come in signing a vow of poverty. We were voluntary peasants. We were basically an eco-village. We were trying to create a graceful, low carbon footprint environment where we could show that, basically that we could live more simply than we did. We were right in the heart of the back to nature movement. Right. And and I joined. I was very enthusiastic. By 24, I was an elected elder within the community. Largely because I was so dedicated. I was a true believer in the sense of, we talk about cult members as being true believers. I actually think that's a wrong term, but in my case, I was a true believer. That is, I really strained to live by what we called our tribal ways. Right. There are lots of what I'd call honest and dishonest false believers. So an honest false believer, the example I use for that is these people I met while lecturing in mainland China. They said, yeah, of course we're communists. We wear the jersey. That's our local thing. We don't think it doesn't make us smarter or more entitled than anyone else. We just wear it because that's how you get by around here. Yeah, I'm a member of the Communist Party. I don't think Marxism has any bearing on reality or how we should live. I just wear the jersey. So that's what I'll call an honest false believer. A dishonest false believer is someone who says, yeah, I wear the team jersey and it entitles me to all sorts of stuff. Because I claim to be this thing, everybody should treat me as an authority. I'm on the side of, I don't actually practice it all. I don't actually do anything. I don't actually read our sacred texts. I thump them to claim that I'm an expert. So that would be what I'd call a dishonest false believer. Right.
Plenty of those out there.
Yeah. No, these days especially, there's some epidemics of it.
Yeah, for sure. I see it all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, man. So what was the name of this place?
The Farm.
Right.
The Farm in Summertown, Tennessee. You should look it up. It's still there. It's 300 people still there.
Oh, wow.
It's no longer a commune. It's a cooperative now. Back then it was, in my last years there, I was the chief purchaser for the place. So I had the money. I got money every week. I bought all the food and dry goods for everyone as cheap as I possibly could because we weren't making it financially. Right. And then they would be distributed from a general store. No money changed hands. It was basically however many people were in your household, you got that allocation. So in that sense, it was a commune. You didn't own anything. You owned your own musical instrument. You owned your clothes, obviously. But no, you didn't own a car. There were commune cars. We had our own motor pool, a bunch of guys, grease monkeys who worked on cars all the time.
Right.
I tended to be more the construction side of it. I worked in refrigeration for a while. I was a fire chief for a while. And then for 2.5 years of my time there, I was in Guatemala doing water projects for poor villages.
Oh, wow.
So it was.
What was that like?
That was fabulous. It was, yeah, we were up in the highlands hanging out with Mayans. I learned a little bit of the local language. I also learned Spanish while down there. And we'd find, one village I worked in was 3 miles from the nearest road and from the nearest water. And half the kids were dying under the age of 5. And we found them water and got it to their village, 8 kilometers of pipeline. I designed the whole pipeline. I found the water. It was fabulous fun. I felt totally heroic doing that stuff.
Yeah, how could you not? That's awesome, man.
Yeah. And right around that time, I was marrying a member of the commune, and it felt like life was.
Oh, so you could have sex at that point. Good for you.
That's right. I finally did that. Right.
You finally got engaged.
That's right. And we stayed married for quite a while, 16 and a half years, and then, and now we thank each other because we were heading in different directions, and we needed our liberation from, it got to the point where she was disappointed when I was following my pursuits and vice versa. And at that point, it didn't make any sense to be in the 3-legged race joined to her. Yeah,
no, absolutely. That can be hard, man. That's something I've been dealing with lately, because I've got certain pursuits that I have interest in, be it school or, I'm studying to be a Dharma teacher, facilitator, which I know you love that. That's great. But I'm studying to do that. And, I just got to, make the podcast, and I got all kinds of things going on.
Yeah.
And, the girlfriend, she's got 2 kids. Granted, they're older. They're like 12 and 14.
Yeah.
But still, she's very into the family life. And I am too, honestly. But I'm trying to find a balance between everything rather than just saying, oh, well, I can't I can't have my pursuit and have a family. Like, that's fucking bullshit. Yes, I absolutely can.
Right. But
why can't I?
Well, it's obviously you're also talking about how you juggle all that stuff.
Right. Yeah. And then that's something that's what I'm still working on figuring out, is like finding a balance between everything. And that's what I'm kind of struggling with at the moment. But, I am actively trying to figure out how to balance it. So I think that's better than just not acknowledging the fact that things are maybe a little off balance right now.
No, I get, all of those questions. I've been around that many times. And I'm 65 now. So what I end up saying is I'm glad my lack of appetite finally caught up with my lack of aptitude. I'm simply happier having my own free time.
Right.
I used to worry that if I had too much free time, nothing would keep me off the streets.
Right.
But now I've recognized that in my particular situation, certainly not true for everybody.
Right.
When I have my free time, I use it productively on the priorities I've got. So I'm working to my own best standards. But I couldn't have pulled it off before a certain age. I had a kind of hormonal certainty that I needed to be partnered, and tried to figure that out over and over. Had a great run, glad for it, but at this age, and the funny thing is that I have a bunch of friends who are roughly my age. Many of them are married, and they have figured it out. They have the balance,
right?
Because basically they've got their compatibilities, they've got their incompatibilities, which they have skills in negotiating. My problem with relationships was mostly that I had trouble finding someone with whom I was compatible in how to negotiate the incompatibilities.
That's a big thing, man. The negotiation is such a huge part of a relationship.
And if you have different negotiation styles, it'll really mess things up. That's what I never solved. So, and then space taking, to simply be able to do things in parallel, without it becoming a referendum on whether you love each other.
Right.
That is, without it becoming an insult that you have another priority. Really hard to pull that off.
It is hard. It's very hard.
Yeah, but it's a wonderful venture. I'm glad I did all that stuff. It was a bit of a rock tumbler. I used to be even more abrasive than I am now. I know that's hard to imagine.
You're a very kind man. You've been nice to me, but then again, I haven't tried to be in a relationship with you, so I don't know, man.
No. A lot of my work on assholes and cults is how to give them a hard time.
Right.
No, I mean, and how to do that and this does come back to love. I do love assholes. I love them. So I think of them as blindly wielding swords. But what I mean by a sword is it's double-edged. They're playing prude half the time, and they're playing punk half the time. They're playing adult pedant, basically lecturing you on morality half the time, and half the time they're playing petulant brat. So they're what you'll get from assholes is that this is just one dimension. There's a bunch of dimensions on which they're double-edged, but they're half shaming you for not living up to moral standards and half cackling at you for caring about moral standards. It's fascinating. So that's the sword they're blindly wielding, and no wonder people want to get out from under it. So I don't attack them, and I certainly don't take on any arguments they make. I don't think they give a shit about anything they claim to care about so much it trumps all other considerations. So I will not grab their blade. I will grab their hilt and be relentless. So I have dealt with assholes with people who I bet are assholes. I could be wrong, but I have to be able to make a careful bet. And I spend 250 pages in my new book trying to figure out what would give you careful bets about whether you're dealing with an asshole or just someone you disagree with or something. But no, I'm ruthless. I'm relentless. I ridicule. I will attack. I will point out over and over. What I'm doing is grabbing the hilt. I'm not going to grab them. I love them. They're people.
Right.
And I'm not going to grab their arguments because their arguments they don't care about their arguments. They're playing a different game. If they can wield you around with their arguments, they win. They don't actually care about their arguments. And this would be true of a Trump asshole. It'd be true of a Buddhist asshole. It'd be true of a Christian asshole. It'd be true of a Hindu asshole. It's not about what anybody claims. It's all the same bullshit, just different branding.
Yeah, I mean, you get right down to it. An asshole's an asshole. You can put whatever other marginalizing label you want on it, but with their deep core, they're still just a fucking asshole.
Right, and so I have to be very clear about what it means to call someone an asshole, because my assumption is that in a free society, you don't get to tell people what the Dharma is. Everybody, there are different Dharmas apparently for different people.
Right.
And yes, someone can elect to learn a Dharma. Any particular Dharma. But you don't get to say, hey, everybody on the count of three has to behave this way. You don't get to do that in free society, but you still have to put a leash on assholes, or else it won't remain a free society. So the question for me is, what is the best operational definition of an asshole? What's the most objective definition we could come up with for them? What is a butthead, since it can't just be whoever I happen to butt heads with?
Right.
That's been central to my work for about 25 years, trying to figure that one out.
All right. So what is the operational definition of an asshole? We've already got out into the operational definition of love. So let's touch on some assholes.
So I could pull out my butt any definition and then come up with justification. And I think that's a problem. I mean, there are books about assholes that do that.
Right.
I have to try a different method, and I have a different method born of this origins of life work, which is I have to basically, in the sciences, a prior science like chemistry has to explain what a subsequent science assumes. So chemistry has to explain what's going on in the features that biology assumes, and biology has to explain the features that psychology assumes.
Right.
So I have to do that with assholes. And while there are a lot of animals that are predators or parasites, I think being an asshole is a human thing. And I think it's born of our capacity to use symbols. And by symbols, I don't mean symbols like crosses or mandalas. I mean a particular thing that's described in semiotics, a study of signs, which is language or math or that sort of thing. This is something unique to humans, and it makes us a radically different kind of organism from other organisms.
Right.
We have language, which also enables us to live in two realms. That is, if the world gets tough or I want to daydream, I can just close my eyes and imagine that I'm a legend in my own mind.
Right.
We have something in common with all animals in that we have to take in energy we can use to regenerate ourselves and keep out energy that will degenerate us. Mm-hmm. That means that, like other animals, we have to eat food, not poison. Okay.
Probably a good idea.
But we're also this symbolic species, which means that we also want to take in ideas that confirm or affirm our mojo. And we don't want to take in ideas that are bummers. That would be a standard thing. And we have a name for it in psychology. We call it confirmation bias.
Absolutely.
So what I'm saying about an asshole, normal, decent people, by which I mean adaptive people, that is, decent originally meant well-suited or adapted.
Right.
Okay. So decent people recognize that confirmation bias is a problem they have to manage. Sometimes you have to hear bad criticism, that sort of thing. Assholes treat confirmation bias as the solution to all of their problems. They stumble on a formula by which they can dismiss anything that discourages them and take in anything that encourages them. That is, they are in effect self-winding movements. No matter how you shake them, they get wound up. If you attack them, they accuse you of being the villain, and therefore they're heroic for fighting you. If you support them, that's affirmation that they're on the right path. They're basically playing God. And one of the points I want to make is that it's really tempting. Playing God is if you can get away with it, playing God is way easier and more fun than being human.
Right, for sure, yeah.
Yeah, so it's not a very different, I'm not looking to come up with a novel definition, but I am trying to get very clear on what's going on. And basically, I think that you could play God with a very simple formula.
Ooh, let's have that.
It's the wild card, trump card formula, which is basically, I can do anything and anything I do is unassailable. See, here's one of the things, I just noticed this morning. There is nothing you can't rationalize or moralize by putting together moral ideas, kind of a mosaic of moral ideas. So this moral principle justifies this move, and this moral principle justifies that move. Right. In fact, I'm going to be making a card game out of this. You got all these moral principles like tolerance. Tolerance sounds like a perfectly good thing, and then you can actually recognize that it's not when you recognize that it's self-contradictory to say be intolerant of intolerance.
Right.
Don't be negative is negative. You shouldn't be judgmental is judgmental. So apparently there are these opposites. We're dealing with dilemmas. Should I be tolerant or intolerant in this situation? So I'm going to make a bunch of cards that represent each of these moral ideals. And then I'm going to have another set of cards that are things that you have to defend, like genocide. And the trick is going to be to generate an argument by playing these moral cards that justify whatever you want to, and you get extra points by using opposite moral principles in the same case. It's not a great game. I mean, there are better games. I'm on VR.
Great game. I'm going to be honest with you. It sounds like a great game to me.
But you learn from it that moralizing is super simple. You just buy all the principles and use them amnesically. That is, you forget that you use. A minute ago, you said you pulled out your butt whatever moral principle you needed in the moment, and you said this is the number one priority. I make all my decisions based on that. Right. Then you drop that card and pull out your butt another card, which may be exactly the opposite card, and say this is the moral principle by which I make all my. So because of that, I think. You end up, once you realize you can do that, you basically can justify anything. And what we would want to do, what any organism would want to do, is whatever they want and be perfectly safe doing it. They can do no wrong and they can do whatever they want. That's what any organism would want. No one wants to be thwarted. So basically an asshole has found this wild card, trump card formula where they're perfectly free to do anything. That's the wild card. And whatever they do trumps all other possibilities. They're unassailable.
Sounds like narcissism and sociopathy.
Yes, but here's the interesting thing about it. Narcissism implies that they're self-infatuated. I actually don't think assholes are. I end up calling, by the end of my book, assholes Trump bots. And no, I'm not talking about Donald Trump, even though he is a perfect Trump bot. They are robotically playing trumped up Trump cards. That is, the word Trump means both fake and beats everything. So a Trump bot is just fake pretending they beat everything, no matter what they do. Right. And it's robotic behavior. Right. You can't really afford to be thinking about yourself while you do this stuff. And like any addiction, once you start to do it and it works, at some point it stops working. You stop getting the buzz that you got off of it. So I actually think that it's a little bit closer to a zombie state, but it's a zombie with rhetoric that throws off people who are trying to be conscientious. Right. That is, they can accuse you of anything, and if you are gullible because you're trying to be a good person, you'll start defending yourself to them. You're defending yourself to a robot. They don't care at all. They're just trying to beat you at your game. So, and this is my problem with the press these days a lot, is that they continue to talk to people who have lost all moral credibility and ask, do you mean that? Do you care? That's like asking a psychopath, do you mean that? Totally enabling. So
it's like having a conversation with my cat. Like,
that's right. That's right.
Cat. Like, she's not going to,
that's right.
She has this deep sense of morality. Like, no, she's just a fucking monster.
That's right. No, it is actually, it's a regression to a kind of braying. Right. Braying, it's based, I call it bullshit dosing. Bullshit is defined these days in psychology as not caring what's true. So bullshit dosing it's different from lying. Lying is considered where you're not telling the truth. The point with a bullshitter is that they don't actually, it's not relevant whether it's true or not. They're only in it for the advantages, so they're bullshit dosing.
Right, yeah.
And animals would be like this. They would bray or make whatever sounds. The problem is that for humans, the braying noises, basically, I deserve whatever I want, will sound like words. And if you're someone who can't see through that, you'll address the words, and that's not going to help you. We see this in child rearing. Parents who take on what the kid says as if the kid is in earnest. The kid's braying. He's just using words.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That's 100%. I see that a lot.
I bet you do. I bet you do. You're raising 12. The kids around your scene must occasionally demonstrate something like this.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I don't even think they realize they do it. It's funny that you mentioned that about narcissists, and your take on that they don't really, you don't feel like they really love themselves in the sense and I guess I would agree with that to a sense, because there is no view. They really don't view the self like that. There's no introspection there. They're just in some sort of a trance mode.
Introspection would only trip them up. That is, they can't afford to see themselves.
That would be completely antithetical to their end goal. Like, if that would stop them in their tracks.
Yeah. So, and in psychology, in psychiatry as well, they recognize that this is a myth about narcissists, that narcissists actually have a very inadequate sense of selves. And the argument they make is that they're compensating for it by talking like they're all that. Right. But I want to actually argue that it's a vicious cycle. That is, if you stumble on habits that get you what you want, you will drop yourself.
Yeah.
And if you drop yourself, then you'll be more and more reliant on
those habits,
on those wild card, trump card formula. That's all. And so it's another thing we tend to overlook. If I stumble on something I can say, maybe I'm imitating someone that gets me what I want.
Right.
I'll keep saying it. It'll become a habit for me. I'll be addicted to saying it. I never have to actually think about what it means. It was just, it's like a magic spell for me. That's what would happen in humans.
Right. Yeah.
So it takes an extra effort to actually think about what you're saying, and often a costly effort that keeps you from getting what you want.
Okay, I had a question. Well, we were talking about cults, right? So what do you... Like, we can try to examine the mind of, like, I have two questions, actually. What do you think makes a cult leader become a cult leader? Like, what is the psychology behind that? And then what makes somebody interested in following an individual like that? Like, is it just enigmatic personality? Is it just, they're just so drawn to this person? Like, that kind of answer when you're working in the fields I work in is, I'm sure it's different for everybody too.
No, but no, let me clarify something. Because in a way, we're talking about how do you shop The core work I do is in what they call epistemology, which is just the fancy name for how do you shop among interpretations.
Right.
So one thing we have to watch out for in this work is what we call tautology, which was originally, it was also called begging the question. So if I said, why do we like sugar? And then we said, and the answer was because it's sweet. I wouldn't have actually answered the question. I would have rephrased the question as an answer. So why do we think that why do we like sugar? Well, it's sweet. Doesn't actually say much. So if I said, because they're charismatic, that's almost the same question re-answered. But I have an answer to your question. I had to think about this the other week. When you're reading all this stuff about authoritarian leaders and followers, you notice that there are differences between them. But I mean, a lot of followers could be really gullible. You wouldn't say that about an authoritarian leader. You could say that an authoritarian leader will play to the gullible because they're easier to get than the other people. You're not going to get cult leaders who are going to go after critical thinkers of the most sophisticated kind. That's not worth it. They can go after the gullible. But the other day I noticed that actually the way I think about the difference between an authoritarian or a cult leader and a cult follower is basically the difference between people who are part of a bullshit pyramid scheme. The authoritarian leaders are the ones who are already profiting from it, and the authoritarian followers are the ones who are hoping to profit off of it.
Right.
So it's hollow, but the aspiration, in a way, I already described in the first person, that is autobiographically, how one joins one of these things. If you're dealing with doubts and self-doubt, and you land on something that feels like a wake-up call, like sudden school in Buddhist terms, that makes you feel like you've got a path to alleviate those doubts, then it will become attractive to you and you'll enter something like purgatory. So purgatory is an interesting concept. It's where you're busy purging your sins. When you're in purgatory, you're destined to go to heaven, according to Catholics. You're basically in heaven's waiting room. Right. So if someone said, I've joined the cult, I don't behave perfectly that way yet, I'm getting there. I still have monkey mind. I still have that, but I know how to get rid of my monkey mind and I'm working on it. That would be the kind of aspiration. And you would already have relief because even though you haven't reached nirvana yet, you know the path to it.
Right.
And that could be true of any cult. It could be exactly, it could be like you could be a Proud Boys person who does this or, whatever. It doesn't matter. Once again, it's not about what you claim to believe. It's how you strut it. And you can strut it. So that would be the advantage for the followers. The other thing is, I was thinking about this today, wrote it up today in an article. Imagine you get a windfall where suddenly you are super hot or super rich or super powerful or super famous. And everywhere you go, you can do no wrong and you get away with whatever you want to do. Who's going to walk away from that? It's what every human being would want, is that kind of windfall. So if you start to get followers, you're going to fall for it. I mean, if you're a rock star, this is what all of those rock star biographies are about. I could do no wrong, so I did a lot of wrong, and now I found Christ and I'm off the drugs. That kind of thing is exactly what you'd expect from humans. Right. If we land in a windfall. So that would be the advantage for a leader. And the feeling, I think, for most cult followers is that they are leader wannabes. That is, they are aping the sounds that the leader makes, and as a result, they are feeling more and more purged of their self-doubt and their doubts. They have their path, and that's exactly what I felt when I was on the commune. So in that sense, the parallels between the addictions to drugs and the addictions to cults are very similar from my perspective.
So would you say that within the structure of the cult, that the follower is basically, how can I phrase this? It's basically just like an addiction to achieving the top of the dominance hierarchy of whatever power structure that is?
It's not necessarily about the power. Here's an image that'll make it clear. We're all climbing up these ropes on the side of an enormous cliff. And if we fall, if we grab a shaky rope or something and we fall, we die. Right. Okay. So that makes us very anxious. And we're dreaming about a plateau on the top where we are perfectly safe and perfectly free. We're not going to fall. We're not going to fall our death. We're no longer striving to survive. We're not struggling to survive. There's nothing iffy about it. We landed on this plateau above it all. And in fact, we can even gloat about all the people desperately climbing up near us. I mean, climbing and not getting there. We can engage in some schadenfreude. Look at those guys. They just fell down. These guys don't know which branches to grab. Okay. So imagine that we hear someone calling from down the way that they found a sturdy branch that'll get you to the plateau. Now, I don't have to be the leader of that, but I will definitely be drawn to the sturdy branch that'll get you to the plateau is purgatory. It's basically, you've got a path. You're going to be safe as you climb this path. You won't fall. You won't backslide. You'll climb up it and you will arrive at the plateau. So you don't have to be the king of the plateau, but you definitely want the plateau. That's what will drive us.
Okay.
And this is an interesting thing that hit me the other day, just a week ago, about Buddhism. Buddhism is in a part a cure for what ails you.
Pretty much.
But it's also touted as the way to reach a more than normal state. You're not just trying to be decent. You're actually there's an exalted state on offer there. And I'm not saying all Buddhism is like this. It could just be the American New Age version of it. But it is interesting that and I wouldn't put it past any method to eventually upsell the advantages. So it's not just like, how am I going to get rid of my doubts and self-doubts? It's how I'm going to reach some state of perfection. And that's it. It's just interesting that I think that's true of. So people will often join a thing like that because they want to stop feeling anxious. And people will often end up feeling like it's not just a cure. It's a path to something exquisite.
Right. Well, I mean, I think it's kind of bottled and sold that way. You know, the ultimate goal is nibbana, right?
Yeah, that's right.
I think everybody, like at least all the Dharma practitioners, I'm not going to call them Buddhists because then you get into a whole other conversation, but at least all the Dharma practitioners that I know are like, I mean, yeah, that's the goal. Like, do I think I'm going to get there? Probably not.
Yeah. But one of the things that has to happen in such situations is that we never entirely escape the transactional. What am I going to get for meditation, for all of this discipline, for the time I consume in this?
Right.
It would be over centuries. There would be a tendency to amplify it. So Taoism is an interesting example this way. It did not start out with. It started out as a kind of a paradoxical, crazy wisdom. Where you basically face right into the dilemmas of life. But after a few centuries, you end up with the 8 immortals who are like gods in it, and the chance that you could become immortal. Right. You know, it's what. Of course, you're going to add those bells and whistles to it. You know.
Yeah, you got to make it appealing, right?
That's right. That's right. So this is also part of the pyramid scheme side of this.
I can see that. That's funny. I didn't even, I've never really correlated the two with Taoism, but that's funny. It's like, over time, like it starts out this way and then, hey, you've got these 8. That's ridiculous.
No, that's right. No.
I mean, when you say it out loud like that, it just sounds fucking ridiculous. You know what I'm saying? Like,
no, I know. But so I'm a romantic cynic. That is, I could be taken as someone who's fatalistic or hypocritical or nihilistic. I'm anything but.
Right.
I'm trying to figure out how to deal with life's inescapable dilemmas. Basically, the serenity prayer kind of stuff. And like I mentioned the other day, I've written all sorts of variations on it and 150 articles about it. Why? Because it's dealing with the wisdom to notice the differences that make a difference to well-being between opposites. Serenity and courage, they both sound good, but no, apparently they can't both be things you have on all the time.
Right.
Or else you wouldn't need the wisdom to know when to do which. So I think that dilemmas are way more fundamental than principles. I think of principles as basically psychological antibodies attacking from opposite sides, trying to close what Pema Chodron would call the open wound. That is, it's just, life is, we're climbing vines. No matter what path we take, we could fall.
Yeah.
This is scary shit. It's also slapstick.
Oh yeah.
Because I mean, so how do you handle it? I actually think irony and fallibilism are the That's what I bet on, which is I'm a pragmatist. I'm trying to figure out how to live. I think the meaning of life is to not end it. That's all, So I'm trying to figure out when to do what, when to love, when to hate, all that sort of stuff.
Have you figured anything out yet in that aspect?
Sure. Not only that, we were born having figured some of this out. Our adaptations are all about that. So yeah, you take the serenity prayer and you can apply it from the origins of life. Right. Organisms have to figure out what in their environment to protect against and what in their environment to exploit for their own self-regeneration. So protecting against is the serenity, accept this thing as unchangeable. You're not going to be able to change the weather, so you have to grow fur. Right. It's not a conscious decision, but it is nonetheless an adaptation that would happen. Right. If you're a beaver and you're not going to be able to change the weather, you better protect yourself against it. If you're a beaver, you can also have the courage to change trees into habitat, into residence.
Absolutely.
So the serenity prayer goes back that far, not consciously, not even felt. I would say that bacteria are still dealing with the same dilemma. So that means that you were born with all sorts of built-in capacities to pay attention to the differences that make a difference. And then on top of that, all life long, you're learning through trial and error and cultural access and all this stuff, better stuff. So no, I got some wisdom. I want more. In fact, I think that that's a place where the serenity prayer didn't quite get it right. What is wisdom to know? I think actually the wisdom is the wanting to know. It's the quest itself. It's wise to want to notice the differences that make a difference.
Well, yeah.
Yeah. And yeah.
If you can notice those differences, it's not going to be to your detriment. If anything, it's
no, you're going to help you in life. You're going to respond better in different situations. And so, and for me, that was the liberation, all the liberation I want, which is that if I make a mistake, for example, I assume that someone's not an asshole when they are, or I assume that someone is an asshole when they aren't, either one, I'll adjust. I'm constantly calibrating my differences that make a difference. It's not like I ever land at the formula by which I can robotically figure out my way through life. And that was in my neurotic approach to Buddhism. That was its appeal. That is, I would never anymore be making foolish moves because I would be perfectly aware of everything that I needed to be aware of. And after a while, I realized, no, that's not how the world works. Seemingly significant things prove insignificant. Seemingly insignificant things prove significant. I'm guessing. Life is guesswork. I'm trying to guess really well.
Right. Yeah, I think we all are. I'm trying to make the best guesses I can anyway. I can't.
Yeah, that's right. And then when you don't make the right, and we're doing it in a world where things change around. So you can make a really good guess and ironically it turns out bad. You can make a really bad guess and ironically it turns out good. Yeah, so I don't beat myself up for falling short of perfection anymore. I basically say I'll adjust. Well, I beat myself up a little bit, but not a lot. Not like I used to.
I think they touched on that with the 3 marks of existence. Life is imperfect, impersonal, and impermanent. So
that sounds good. That's a bummer.
Yeah, bummer, right? It's true. All of those things are absolutely true. We can't deny that life is basically imperfect, for sure impersonal, because it will kick the shit out of you without regard for who you think you are,
right?
And impermanent. I mean,
right. And then what you do with that becomes interesting. So I had interesting jam sessions since I saw you last. I hung out with 3 80-year-olds, and one of them's 87, one was 84, one was 80. And then earlier in the week, I'd hung out with a 75-year-old who's been having health issues, and I noticed that anxiety crowds out curiosity. The anxiety where you have to keep your sense of self affirmed, it crowds out anxiety. And I was thinking about how I haven't heard as much of this from Buddhism as Buddhism could sell. That is the main advantage, or one of the key advantages I'd get from dropping my anxiety was more curiosity about the world we're in. As I don't want to be fatalistic, you could take what you just said about impermanence, imperfect, and all of that as a reason why you could basically go the route of nobody knows shit.
Right.
I call it the doctrine of foregone inconclusion. You never can tell, fuck it, that kind of thing.
Right.
But there's a lot of world to be curious about, and we're some of the rare things in the entire universe that can actually speculate about it if we get our minds out of the way. So I think it's a Buddhist line: truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing, longing for affirmation. There is something about it that actually is, for me, very similar to science. What it offers is, if you get yourself out of the way, to get what you want, set aside what you want long enough to see what is, and then you'll be better informed and can get what you want better. That's science. But it's also truth waits for eyes unclouded by longing. I think that a big selling point of Buddhism is a return of childlike curiosity. Right. You can actually begin to wonder about the whole world because you're not so busy on your self-affirmation campaign. Yeah, that's the advantage of it.
And truth. What was that quote you just said? Truth
waits for eyes unclouded by longing. Not that our eyes ever are unclouded by longing, but that's the idea.
Well, I mean, that's the point of the Four Noble Truths is that basically there is suffering, and that's because of the longing and the craving, that unquenchable thirst.
Right.
So if you can get rid of that, you alleviate yourself from suffering. If you could. It's not gonna be like leaps and bounds. And I don't think the Buddha ever said he could end suffering. Like, it's not the end of suffering. It's a reduction in reactivity to suffering. That's what the Dharma or the Buddhist Dharma offers me.
I understand. I think it might from simply noticing that there's no escaping. So this is it's an interesting question for me. Enlightenment is easy if you have no preference, is the third patriarch of Zen saying that. And I think he's saying it ironically. That is, no one's going to be without preference. It's, right. I think of that. So I'll tend to have a Taoist or paradoxical or ironic reading of all this stuff. I'm done with humorless sacred texts. If you aren't winking at this thing, you're clearly not there yet. Right. So I figure. Yeah, no, I prefer preferences, and I have since my origin.
I think everybody prefers preferences.
Yeah, and I have since 3.5 billion years ago, when organisms preferred being alive. That is what the struggle of existence is about. Yeah. I have the overlay of all these emotions that the first organism didn't have, and I've got the overlay of concepts which no other organism has like we do. So I'm having a whole lot of suffering because I can imagine all sorts of terrifying threats and missed opportunities. Life is going to be anxious for humans. It would be anxious for any language capable organism in the universe, right? Because you face right into this clusterfuck of real and imaginary threats and missed opportunities, and you're going to be an anxious bunny. So for me, it's more like don't panic. It's organic. It's like this is apparently what the curriculum is for people who for things that stumble into my circumstances. This mid-sized mammal with language, it's a trip. So I'm no longer in the business of. I'm trying to laugh at my suffering more. I no longer believe that there's any ending it. I'll end it when I die, but then I won't be here anymore to enjoy the
I won't be there to enjoy it. Yeah, exactly.
No, that's right. But no, in general, that's how I feel. No, I'm happy. I'm happy to, and this is a Ram Dass point too. He used to say, "This is the curriculum."
Yeah.
Get with it.
I was just about to say, Ram Dass said, I think it was like right after, maybe not right after, but a few years after he had his stroke, he was, he was like, I love my wheelchair. I love my suffering. It's like, yeah, that's the shit right there. You got to learn to love the suffering as much as you love the joy. That's the trick. It's just appreciating the human experience for what it is. It's appreciating in all of its joy and all of its sorrow. That's the trick. It's like, it's
which may be different from loving it. So once again, the words are interesting here. Right, but he was pivotal for me. He was pivotal on this point for me. He used to say, he was local out here. I got to hang out. I used to have lots of one-on-ones with him even. I once got to ask him, I once got to tease him, is there room at the top for more nobodies like you? But But he said something that was actually pivotal for me. It ended my relationship with psychoanalysis. He said psychoanalysis. He said, I had 10 years of psychoanalysis. I taught psychology at Harvard. I've taken every psychotropic drug there is, and I've studied with India's greatest gurus. I haven't lost a single one of my neuroses. He said, they've just gone from being these formidable, terrifying, imposing forces that will intrude on my life. Basically, there's a word for it. They just bust in the door, to being these little snoids. Snoids are an underground comics character created by R. Crumb. Worth looking up, Snoid.
I'm familiar with Crumb, but not the Snoid.
The Snoid was his drawing of a neurotic feature of his persona.
Okay.
And he says they enter my house. I invite them in for tea.
Yeah.
And at that point, I realized that psychoanalysis was great for me, getting me to face my snoids, but not great for getting me to lighten up about them.
Right. Well, I mean that's straight from the Dharma. Mara comes to the Buddha, and Ananda's like, "Yo, Buddha, fucking Mara's here. You remember that guy?" He's like, yeah. Invite that guy in. He's, and I was like, "Are you sure?" It's like, no, bring him in. I want to have tea with him. Brings Mara in, hugs him. He's like, "Hey, how you been, Mara?"
Yes,
and that's what you have to do. That's what Jung talked about with the shadow.
Yeah,
that's how you actualize yourself, is by integrating the shadow. You don't want to get rid of it. Good luck with that.
Yeah,
good luck good luck trying to get rid of the shadow. Like, a friend of mine has a good quote, and I use it a lot when I'm having this kind of discussion. And he's like, he's like, the ego is a tricky thing. He's like, if I'm in a burning building, that my ego is what's going to get me out of it. But I'm also pretty sure that my ego is the one that set the fire.
I get that.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's interesting. So you've had some one-on-ones with Ram Dass. That's super cool, man. I always wanted to meet him, man, and I was looking into going to one of the spring retreats in Hawaii over the past few years.
Yes.
And I just then the pandemic happened, and then he died in December. It was like, fuck.
I had a buddy who was really close with him, moved him, got him his place in Hawaii, and it was through this buddy that I got to know him, and it was interesting. He had contradictions about him.
I'm sure,
like we all do. At one point, when I first went to see him, it was before the accident, before the stroke, and he said, if all of my friends disappeared and were replaced by other people, I wouldn't mind at all. And I understood what he was talking about. I think it's half true. It's a strange, it's basically like the Quakers who say, build it to last 100 years, be ready to leave tomorrow.
Right.
But then after the stroke, I reminded him of that. And he said, I would never have said that. So his word against mine, but I was listening to every word he said.
Right.
Yeah, he was a human. Human.
Exactly. And it's funny when talking about cult leaders and just just humanity and just human traits. It's like people put people like Ram Dass up on this pedestal, but at the end of the day, he puts his fucking pants on. Well, probably not Ram Dass when he had a stroke. Before the stroke, he put his pants on just like you and me.
Right. This is my problem. I mentioned this last time. That is, I think that anytime what we call bhakti yoga, the devotional yoga to a person, is very motivating. That is, we grew up devoted to our parents, so you just do that with someone else. But it's also very dangerous, because any claim like, what would Buddha do? What would Ram Dass do? As if these guys had the formula. No, that's not how life works.
I think the whole point of both of their work was like, just here's a map for you to figure out your own fucking formula. Figure out what works for you. But nobody, and I think I told you last time, I always say, beware of anybody, any person or program that says they have all the answers.
Yeah. No. That's right. That's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whether it's Trump or Ram Dass or Christ, it's just not, that's not how this world works.
Yeah, exactly. I don't believe anybody has all the answers. And if you find somebody that claims that they do, stay the fuck away from that guy.
That's right. That's right.
Because you might end up in a cult.
Exactly. Probably. Very much so. Very much so. Probably. Yeah. Excellent.
Man. Cults are so bizarre to me. Just the whole psychology behind it. Now you can get that many people on board with like,
and you can get millions. So this is one of my problems with one of the problems I have with the Institute for Cultic Studies is that they tend to pay most attention to, because of their founders. A lot of the people who work in the Institute for Cultic Studies are people who were in cults and got out and are basically working in cult research and cult helping deprogram people. Right. Met great people this way, but as a result, you get almost no one there talking about the Trump cult. You get no one there talking about Christianity's potential for cultishness because they're too big. They think that we still associate cult with like bizarre small, and extreme and like small and short-lived. No, they can last thousands of years.
For sure. And they have, and they still do. And they probably will.
They will. And that's a big concern of mine. I called the dissociation death spiral, which is and this came to me while on ayahuasca the night that Kavanaugh got into the Supreme Court. The harder reality gets, the more people will check out into fantasies of the ideal. Neglecting reality, it'll get harder, and that more people will end up in it. That's my biggest concern. If I had to guess what would make humans go extinct, it would be the dissociation death spiral, or you could call it the delusional death spiral. As reality is going to get harder now, and partly because, like you said, the ego sets all these fires. And as a result, that we're going to be dealing with these fires, and we're going to pretend we're legends in our own mind, and we're going to pretend we're in purgatory, and we're going to pretend we're halfway there to enlightened. And as a result, we'll neglect reality more. It's terrifying to me because I have kids. Yeah. So I'll be gone. I'll leave this place. I'll leave this party for you to clean up. Sorry, dude.
Shit. I don't know if I'm ready for that.
You're not. I can guarantee.
Yeah, I'd have to agree with that. I don't think I'm ready for that. It's interesting that you mentioned that most of the people in the cult research that you're doing are former cult members. It just reminds me a lot of like addiction. It's pretty commonplace.
Oh, totally
It's pretty commonplace for like former addicts such as myself to go to school to go into some sort of field to help other addicts.
It's right on. I'm grateful for my cultish experience because it gives me a visceral sense. Once again, that's my definition of compassion, which is remembering when I was in their shoes.
Right.
But I also have known people who have fallen. So in the cult work, I did get to meet a few people who I'd say were suffering from "I once was lost, but now I'm blind" syndrome. That is, they left out of one cult and into another cult. It would be a standard move and here's the reason why. You get this sense of self-satisfaction from that you mistakenly attribute to ideas or a formula that the cult sells. It's not about the ideas. It's about this relief from self-doubt and all that. So you reject the ideas at one point. What are you going to do? You're just going to surrender your self-confidence that you got through this thing? No, you'll go ahead and replant it on something else.
Right.
So that's what I call "I once was lost, but now I'm blind" syndrome. That is, I came out, I saw the light, and instead of thinking, yeah, apparently I'm foolable, you think, now I've got it.
Right.
Kind of out of the frying pan into the fire sort of thing.
Yeah, I see that a lot in the 12-step programs.
I can imagine.
Culty, a little bit culty.
Yeah, and again, this time come to the territory. It's not like it's not like only degenerate minds go through this. This is human stuff.
No, trust me, everybody in the rooms is a degenerate for sure.
No, what I mean, no, there is a tendency in psychology to talk about what other people do, and I'm saying no, nothing human is foreign to me. This is the human condition. What do you think? I'm an exception? I have a name for it: exempt by contempt. Because I hate this trait in other people, I must not have it. I must be an expert on it, and I must not have it. Therefore, I look at myself and I don't see it in me. And how could I possibly have that trait? I hate it.
Oh, for sure. If you see it, you've definitely got it. That's what I've noticed. Most of the time.
That's a useful counter. Yeah, that's a useful counter. And once again, I think
spot it, you got
it. Questions of degree matter, or else
for sure.
Or else spot it and you got it means I know you are what am I? I won't go that far.
Oh no, I know you are, and so am I.
Right.
I think
right.
that's more where.
And then the questions of degree matter. That is,
for sure.
I engage in all. I mean, this is a big question I have to address in the book. All of us lie. All of us engage in hypocrisy. So, what makes a liar? What makes a hypocrite?
Right.
It's if we all do it, you need to be able to distinguish what it is, and it's actually the term is absolutism. I mean, so the original quote was "Power tends to corrupt. Absolute power corrupts absolutely." Right. So tends to is an important word. Lying tends to corrupt. It doesn't always corrupt. Sometimes it's just what the doctor ordered. But absolute lying, that is, you can justify anything with lying or hypocrisy. At that point, you're an asshole. At that point, you're a liar. At that point, you're a hypocrite. At that point, you may be a cultist.
Probably.
Yeah. I mean, I have to distinguish between assholes with a cause and assholes without a cause. Right. There are some people who just act like assholes because they're them, because I said so. If they can get away with it, they'll do that. But there are also plenty who do it cloaked in some kind of doctrine.
Yeah. I think generally, well, maybe not generally, but I think you find all assholes just gravitate towards the doctrines. You know what I mean?
Perhaps, yeah. No, it's great cover. It's great cover. I mean, and so in my case, we were talking earlier about whether narcissists have a sense of self. I don't think the emperor has no clothes. I think the emperor is nothing but a hollow suit of armor. That's all that's left of them because they've disappeared. They can't afford to be out there. They're not selling the Dharma anymore. They're basically wielding their self-certainty. Right. They stumbled on the formula. They may have joined for the cause, but they'll stay for the playing God is basically what it is. And you can get out of this. One of the challenges I have had to face is that, are there real assholes? Yeah, there are, just like there are doctors. That is someone can be an asshole extendedly, just like someone can be a doctor. But no, I don't assume the person themselves has to be forever. In fact, I think of calling someone an asshole as a kind of intervention. The person who doesn't think they can change is the asshole. The person who thinks why bother changing? Right. So they're the ones who will treat it like a permanent state. I'm actually calling attention to it to say, you don't have to do this. You're a human, dude. Get out from that. Come back from that suit of armor.
Right.
Reappear.
Well, let's hope they all reappear because there's an awful lot of assholes out there.
And I can tell you why they will, because they will have read my book and they will be moved to everybody in the world will read my book. And everybody will transcend their evil ways. You've got to change your evil ways and the world will go around twice as fast and everybody will be happy and peaceful and loving on the count of 3.
So everybody can achieve nirvana by reading.
That's right. So
what's the name of your book?
Is What's Up with Assholes.
Oh, What's Up with Assholes.
Yeah, so it's a book about what not to be. I'm not in the position to tell people how they should be, but right. I do like the idea that I've written a book about humility that is going to be a #1 bestseller, and everybody. irony.
Hey, that's good. I love it. That's the Tao. Hey, well, thanks, Jeremy, man. I really appreciate you doing this again with me. Yeah, like I said,
problem.
Had some Zoom issues. Hopefully, this one comes out good. We're gonna find out.
Boy, I hope so too.
If not, I mean, we're gonna do this again anyway because I think you're fucking awesome, and I think you're super fun to talk to. So I really enjoyed getting the opportunity to do this again, just by circumstance.
Yes,
and awesome.
That'd be fun. Yes.
Cool. Well, thanks again, man. Like I said, let's do it again, and have a great rest of your day, man.
You too. You take care.
Thanks again to Dr. Jeremy Sherman for being on the show. And if you want to get in touch with him, I will have links to all of his information on the liner notes of the episode on dharmajunkiepodcast.com. And remember to pick up his book, What's Up with Assholes. Again, if you enjoyed the show, please remember to rate, review, and subscribe. This has been Dharma Junkie. Namaste.
chaos is beautiful.
It's you I like. It's not the things you wear, not the way you do your hair, but it's you I like. The way you are right now, the way down deep inside you, not the things that hide you, not your toys, they're just beside you, but it's you I like. Every part of you, your skin, your eyes, your feelings, whether old or new. I hope that you'll remember, even when you're feeling blue, that it's you I like. It's you, yourself. It's you I like.